Welcome everyone to the Unboxing Careers podcast, where we shed light on what different careers are really like so that you can choose a career you really love. I'm your host, Greg Zakowicz, and today we're diving into a career in the entertainment industry with Emmy Award-winning producer. But before we do, let's talk briefly about unboxing thoughtful gifts. At thoughtfulcollection.com, you can shop from a wide selection of curated products you can feel good about, helping you express friendship, gratitude, and love. The next time you need to, don't just gift, give thoughtfully at thoughtfulcollection.com. All right, I'd like to welcome to the show Jenni Powell, award-winning producer and chair of producing at New York Film Academy. Jenni, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, this is super exciting because I watch stuff and I have no idea how anything is made, what the roles. I see the credits and I'm like, oh, that's great, right? So this will be fun for me as well. Let's start with this. Main job of a producer. What are we doing as a producer?
So if you are seeing that position of producer, it can mean several things, but for the most part, what a producer does is they are the top of the, if we had an org chart, the producer's at the top. So the producer will usually find the product, find whatever what you want to be creating. They will then hire the people that are involved. They will stay on through pre-production, production, post-production. Usually the producer is first one on and last one off at all times. And this question I get a lot because, especially, for those who are not familiar with what a producer is, people are always asking, why isn't there a best producer award? Like when you see these award shows, they said, because what what the producer gets is best picture. That goes to the producer because that is the person that's putting in the most amount of work in a project. So
that makes sense.
That's like a general overview. We can get kind of nitty gritty into like different types of producers, which I'm sure we will through the course of this conversation. But basically the producer is the head honcho, the big cheese, the leader.
So with people going into the entertainment industry, you get people that want to go into either scoring for music, they want to be actors or actresses. Producer is one of those titles where people say, hey, I want to be, or director, right? I want to be a director, I want to be a producer. So if you're the head honcho, I'm assuming there is a career progression to that point. You don't just roll in, unless it's an indie film, I guess, but you don't just roll into a role of a producer. Walk us through a little bit of, is it a career progression, or can you jump in if you're really good at indie films or something? Can you jump right into that role and kind of make a name for yourself, if you will?
There's definitely many ways to end up on what we call a producer track. Maybe you just already have the skill sets of being a leader and you have access to a ton of resources and you're just really smart at big picture thinking. It is fully possible for someone to come in and be like, that's what I am. I am a producer. That is the job that I'm going to do. That path is quite rare. In general, there's not really for myself, when I started in the entertainment industry, I wanted to be an actor and I was doing a lot of student films, and on student films, the students just need any help they can get. So when I was not needed for something, I just started asking, how can I help? Because I'm the type of person that doesn't want to be bored at all. Like I need to kind of be busy all the time. And I thought that's what an actor would be, but then discovered that the truth of it is, yes, when your scene is being shot, the actor's job is very forefront and important. But there's also all the time when everybody else is setting everything up so that you can be an actor. And I found the downtime frustrating. And so I just started volunteering to do different jobs. And through doing that, I started to ask, well, what is this? What is this that I'm doing? And they're like, well, you would probably fit most into what we would call a producer. And that's how I learned that was something I would be good at. And so I switched gears and just started being like, great, I want to be a producer. Now what do I have to do to get to that job?
So can we continue on that with you make that transition?
Mhm.
Now I need to do these things to get to that job. What are some of those things that you had to go through to do, or maybe not do, but learn as well? Can you walk us through a little bit of that if you could?
I basically just said, do you have a project? I'll take any job available, because I wanted to learn everything. Because a producer does need to know, you don't have to be a master at every job, but you do have to know enough and have a vocabulary so that you can look for the types of people you want to hire in those positions. So I tried editing. I did a lot of casting, found I really enjoyed that process. I'm a screenwriter as well. I write. So yeah, I just kind of said, and it was a lot of production assistant jobs in the beginning, because I needed to build my experience and my resume. Because Nifa knows this, but I didn't go to film school. I have a psychology degree, which oddly enough ended up being perfect for what I do now. And I have a master's in psychology. My film school was kind of working on other students' projects and getting involved. I wish I had gone to film school, because I probably could have gained the knowledge faster than I did on my own. But that wasn't a resource that was available to me when I was starting out. I didn't have the disposable income to be able to have a film school experience.
So I'm sure the explanation will be easy and straightforward, but I got to dig into this a little bit. So you go
Yeah.
to school for psychology. I mean, you obviously, you said you have a master's, right? So you did post education from there.
Yeah.
But you said you also wanted to be an actress.
Mhm.
So, like, was the psychology kind of just something to, not something to do, but like you said, you didn't have the means to go to film school. So, like,
Yeah.
was that what you did have the means for? And then why, if so, and if not, why psychology of all things?
Sure. So growing up, my parents are both musicians. So I come from a very like performance arts background. So they were putting me into things like dance and singing and acting, and I really enjoyed that. And I made the choice when I went all through high school, and then when I was making a choice on my graduate education, I chose staying in. I grew up in San Diego, California. So I chose staying in California so that I could go to a state school and save some money. But I also went to San Diego State, which had a really excellent drama program, fully
Okay.
intending to go that route. It's funny, both my parents went there. That's actually where they met. They were doing music programs. And then I took my mom, who is also, besides being an amazing musician and artist, also has a very logical brain, which is kind of, I use both my right and my left side, which is also a great producing skill to have. So she counseled me. She said, I know I'm going to support you if you want to be an artist, but why not take some of your general ed classes, get them out of the way, and like maybe have a backup plan just in case the arts don't work out, which was actually great advice. Because I took a Psych 101 class and just was completely inspired by it and completely changed my mind about doing the arts and just full on submerged myself in psychology. And I was actually, my training is in social psychology with an emphasis in human sexual behavior. And I was a sex ed teacher before I switched
Okay.
to
So
doing what I do now.
this is like everyone's path here, right? So,
Yeah, right? This is the logical progression.
so you fell in love with psychology,
Mm-hmm.
sex ed teacher. So you've then progressed to professional career, right?
Yep.
So why did you navigate back to the entertainment side? Like, what drew you? But was it just something in the deep down that you just loved?
Yeah, I think it was always kind of there. I actually am really grateful that I took the time to try some other things first, because I did not move to Los Angeles until I was in my mid-20s, as opposed to like right out of high school. And I'm like, let's go to the place where the dreams happen. You hear these stories of people who show up with $5 in their pocket. I actually showed up with a savings account, which was good. So yes, my logical brain, I think, took over for a bit and was just kind of like, let's try some other things. And honestly, I think my background in other things was very helpful when it came to being a producer, because I had a lot of experiences underneath me that I could bring into that career. Also, my master's program was not exactly what I had hoped it would be. I was doing research in a field that was sort of tangential to what I really wanted to do. And so by the time I finished that program, I kind of had a real sit down with myself and said, what's your next step? What do you want to do next? And I was like, I didn't try to do, like, I fully intended on taking some general ed and then exploring the arts more. And I didn't take that opportunity. So I decided in my mid-20s, when I still had time to make a big move, that I was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to do it. And honestly, my move, a lot of people talk about, I moved from the Midwest. I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. I moved 2 hours away from San Diego to LA. So, but you'd be surprised how different those two places are. It's like night and day. So
close enough to always go back and forth, though, right?
Yes.
That's the beauty of it.
I still do.
There you go. Okay, so let's kind of pivot back into the producing thing. So
absolutely.
You mentioned at the onset there are different types of producers, right, and things like that. Can you maybe break down some of the most common ones that people can kind of decipher between?
Absolutely, and this is really helpful in terms of if students are thinking about wanting to pursue the film school route for producing, is that, and especially our programs here at NYFA, where I'm the chair of producing, because a lot of students first, when they hear it's a producing program, they start to think it's, it's film, I'm making things. That's not wrong. It's not what, like, we do focus on that here. But what I really have to instill in them is like, we are creating producers, the job of the producer. And it tends to take there's like kind of two major areas of producing. One is what we call a line producer, which is the person who is on set, doing budgets, doing breakdowns and making schedules. And it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of making sure everything's running on time, a lot of logistics work. And then on the other end of that, we have what's called a creative producer. And those are the people who are like going out there, finding the projects, thinking of the creative ways to produce them in order to stay to a budget. And it's not like you could be creative while being a line producer, and you can have logistics in a creative producer, but it's more of the focus, if that kind of makes sense, the way I'm kind of breaking it down. If a program is worth its salt, they're teaching you both. A well-rounded producer can be a line producer if they need to, but in general, a producer will kind of pick a focus. I myself fall more on the creative producer end of things. My associate chair here is actually more on the line producer side. So we work together really well because her brain is so very logistics and mine is very like, okay, well, here's the creative idea. Now let's break it down.
So would it be right to assume that you would have both types of producers on a single project, right? The line taking care of all the logistics, like you said, and then the, was it creative producer? Kind of still the boss though, right? So
if you have
everyone below,
have the resources to get both, awesome. You kind of brought up indie producing. Depending on the size of the budget, you may not have the resources to get that. Because on big budget movies, they have multiple creative producers, multiple line producers, a bunch of a whole B camera that all does like just people that are doing inserts versus the people that are working with the actors. So there are tons of opportunities if you call yourself a producer of where in that chain you want to fall. And if you have the resources to be on something that's a really large budget, so that it makes it that you can really focus on like one aspect. That's not the producing that I do. I'm used to working with smaller budgets, and I wear as many hats as possible.
So realistically, someone kind of starting out and getting into it, like I know you said it's going to vary based on what they get into it, what type, what size of project they're working on.
Yeah.
Realistically, when someone gets into maybe their first producing role, like what's that typical project like? Is it completely dependent on whether you're at movies versus television versus something else, or is it generally you start at the smaller thing, you work up, right? I say smaller, like TV smaller. I'm just thinking of like lengthwise, right? Shorter episodes and stuff. But
Sure.
like, where's the traditional starting point? If there is a traditional starting point, maybe there's not.
And with producers, there really isn't. That's why I always kind of say, if somebody's looking into going into producing, the best thing you can do is find mentors. And I do mean mentors. Usually it's great to work with a couple of different producers because the track is so different for each one. And you're going to learn a lot more if you work with a few and kind of be like, how did you do it? I mean, there are students out of film school that go right into television because they have the right, they got somebody's attention because they did an internship during their program or something along those natures, so that they can kind of move right in. But then there's people like me who kind of had to take the long way around because I had to find the education where I could get it and kind of work my way. It's funny, I say up, but I still prefer to do the smaller, more independent projects. I don't see them as being smaller than, say, traditional television and film. My 2 Emmys that I won are in web series.
Okay.
Which was a totally different route that didn't exist like before YouTube.
Is the reason you like those projects, is it the flexibility you have? Is it just more creative, like you can be out there a little bit more? Like what about those type of projects resonates with you?
What got me into it is prior to doing all the web series work that I do, and then working with a lot of, we call them influencers now, but back when I started working with them, they were just YouTubers or vloggers. And I, prior to that, was working in reality television and had a pretty high level, like supervising producer level job in reality television around the time YouTube started. And so when my job was to take care of the groups that were out in the field recording. And so they would often be away from the office, and I would have downtime before they would like bring me what they shot. And then I would produce the segments from the footage. And so I was watching YouTube videos in my spare time because they were quick, and I could, once somebody came in, I could turn them off and just be like, all right. But I became really fascinated with how they were starting to use it for storytelling. And so I just was like, I saw an opportunity, and I went, well, if these influencers and these smaller series had producers, they could get so much more done so much faster. And like, they would have someone that was kind of guiding them instead of it just being kind of like, how do we do this? And so I just completely was like, I'm doing that. I'm going to go and I'm going to do that. So I kind of created my own path, which has served me well over the years. And the reason I like it is, yes, I feel like I have a lot more freedom and flexibility. I'm not having to go through a lot of red tape in terms of like working with the studio. And I, by the way, over the years, I have worked with studios on some of these projects, but, just finding and I found it really challenging. A lot of people are scared when they're like, ooh, low budget. I actually see it as an opportunity. So it's like, okay, how can we expand our thinking? Like, we're not getting a helicopter. It's just not happening. How can we give the essence of a helicopter without having to spend tons and tons of money to get one? Or do I have a friend that randomly does have access to a helicopter? The things I've been able to get just by like asking my friends and just asking around is amazing. So there's always a way to creatively get your vision harnessed, even if when you wrote it down on paper, you were thinking very literally at the time. And that, to me, is a really interesting and fun challenge.
That's cool. Well, it sounds like the role itself, you can kind of fit. There's something out there for any type, right?
Yes.
So whether you like the red tape, you like fighting through that stuff, whether you don't, right? It seems like there's something available for you.
Yeah.
Jenni, I want to talk to you a little bit about like what it's. I know this is going to vary based on the project, kind of what you're doing at the time, but like what a typical week looks like, and maybe if we could use one of your past projects as kind of an example. Tell us a little bit about the project, like just as level setting, and then walk us through like what a typical week might look like for you in that project, if you could.
Sure. I will talk about a project I did called the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was one of the ones that won an Emmy. The Lizzie Bennet Diaries was a narrative series that was an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, but we told it through video blogs. So all through vlogs. So those are the first person, kind of what I'm doing now. I'm talking right into the camera. But it was all hired actors. It was SAG. It was WGA. So it was, for me, it was kind of in terms of levels of, it was still independent. We were kind of doing it on our own, but we also wanted to make sure we could hire the highest level of talent. So while union-wise, it was non-union for the crew, we did have union actors and union writers. So it was this interesting blending of, you know, some of it was very independent feeling, but we wanted the quality to still look like, and we wanted the actors and the writers to benefit from their unions. So that took a lot of negotiation because there wasn't a lot of web series working with the unions at that time. But there was a new media contract in both those areas. So part of what I did was setting up those contracts with the unions. I had to sit down and figure out, okay, where are we shooting this? We had 13 actors, but the project ran for a year. We shot once a month, and we would shoot a month's worth of episodes in one shoot day. Wow. Which sounds insane. And I when I talk to students about this and I tell them we shot 50 pages in a day, that freaks them out.
And how many episodes a month?
8 to 10. Because we released 2 episodes a week. Sometimes we'd have a bonus episode or 2. So that's what a month worth of content looks like. Now, it was all vlog style, so there was no camera movements. The camera was locked. We would have to change out backgrounds and change out lighting to show time of day. And then basically we block shot a month's worth of content. So for the actors, it was a very long day, especially the lead actor, who was pretty much in every single episode. But they were rock stars. And what was interesting about how we kind of ran rehearsals is we almost ran it like a theater production, because it was just like, we got to go, and we got to go real fast. And the lead actress had a lot of theater background experience, which is what I was looking for, because I also helped with the casting. So as you can tell, as I'm talking, this is producer brain is going full force. So the way that a week might look is I'm making call sheets and making scheduling with the help of my first AD. We had a first AD. And I did casting, and I did the food. I did the catering. because we also shot in my apartment that I was living in, because we looked at a bunch of sound stages and we talked about it a lot. And we realized having to rebuild the set month after month after month was not a conducive way. And I said, well, the only apartment we have long-term access to is going to be one of the crew, one of the main crew. And as the leader, I stepped forward and I said, you can build a set in my bedroom and I will live in it until this project is over.
So how'd that go for you?
It was fine. It worked out. I mean, it's funny. People joke that because it became very popular. It was a very popular show. And my roommate at the time was teasing me. He's like, we should like charge people to come see the set. And I was like, I don't want people to know where I live. Because here's the thing. We shot inside my apartment. You never want to shoot out the exterior shots of your own house or any indication. Like, you have to really watch to make sure you're not shooting any letters or anything with it, because this type of show brought in a huge fandom. And it's the type of fandom, because this is internet fandom. This is another thing I had to learn over the years. They want to find out everything. They want to know where you live. They want to come find you. So I had to learn all these different considerations that some of these other types of projects don't have to think about.
It's crazy that there's weird people on the internet. I've never known this before.
I mean, before we had the internet, it's not that fans didn't exist. I mean, we've had fans have existed, forever. It's just, when you have at your fingertips a lot of information and ways to find people that we didn't have before, it's just something you have to think about.
Oh, yeah. I was just teasing. They're out there. So you go through that. So you said you're doing shooting one time a month for a month's worth of episodes. Mm-hmm. How much planning goes in that? So obviously the talent is there, the acting talent's there one day.
Yeah.
How many days before are you doing every single day for a month to prep for that? Is it like normal work, you're doing other stuff as well, and then the week before it's all hands on deck? Like, how does that work from a management standpoint?
Most producers are juggling multiple projects at the same time, like in different stages. So I did have other projects that were in various stages of either development or production while I was working on the Lizzie Bennett Diaries. And I'm trying to think if I also had a day job during that as well. Because for a lot of my projects, I also had day jobs to supplement what I was doing. And so that is another big key to being a producer, is you have to be a self-starter and you have to be willing to be flexible, because it's very hard for me to say, oh, this is what a day looks like. Because it all depends on, hey, did anything blow up that day? Did an actor not show up on set? And that's all the responsibility of the producer. So there's this fine balance you have to have between being extremely organized and trying to account for everything. But day of, something will go wrong and you can't lose your cool.
You mentioned you had a day job for some of the projects you work with, which I think is pretty typical for a lot of different careers, especially when you're starting out, right? I had 3 jobs at one point post-college, tried to make it float. So this is going to vary, so I know that 100%. But if you're going into it with the goal of being a producer, right, whatever track you're on, and you're doing that, realistically, does it take a couple of years to kind of get your feet settled before you can start making a career of it, where the day job either becomes minimal hours or just kind of dissipates altogether? Or is it a little bit quicker?
I mean, again, it does vary. I would say someone like myself who isn't independently wealthy or have access to unlimited funds. I mean, this is there's something called an executive producer, which I know you've probably seen on in general. An executive producer is the person who actually puts in like the funds. That's a whole nother ball of wax. Those types of people are like, they might be full-time executive producers, and like that's just what they do, is they have access to these funds and they can move them around, and like this is what they do, which is great. That hasn't been my experience. I'm the person who has to go find the funds, and then I'm like, okay, what do you have available, and I'll make it work for you, whether it's, you know, millions of dollars or a couple $100,000. Like it's all going to be different. So for me, and I still consider myself an active producer today, even though I am a full-time chair of producing. And in fact, I started at NIFA teaching one class as like a survival gig on the side. And I was like, oh, hey, I can teach some classes. And I did that for probably 2 or 3 years before I really fell in love with teaching and said, you know what, for a while, I want to focus on academia. And that is the route that I chose. But I was still, to this day, I'm still producing content on the side. And actually, you know, depending on where I'm at, I may take some time off and go do a project and then come back.
How do you find those projects? Like, is both now and when you're starting out, is it through contacts, such as networking? Is it through, you know, I know you were an actor, so you're doing gigs and stuff like that, and you hit that downtime. Like, I don't know, stupid question, but like, is there a job board? Like, how do you actually go and find those projects to work on?
I've been really lucky because of the fact that like I have a network and I'm really good at networking. I'm saying I have that skill. I have the skill of networking. Doesn't mean I like networking. I'm actually really introverted. A lot of people, when they see me talk, they're like, you're crazy. I was like, no. This was a lot of work to cultivate, to be able, but I like interacting with people. I generally like to do it more one-on-one, but I do understand the value of networking. And so the first thing I did was to find events like there's meetups that happen all the time of like for me, it was meeting up with other people who made web series. And in the beginning, that was a small group of people. And we all got to know each other very quickly. You really quickly figure out who's reliable, who you can, like for me, I'm like, what do you need? Oh, I can do that. And then I do it. It sounds simple on paper, but you'd be surprised how many people get caught up in like, oh, you say what you can do, you follow through with it, and then people will want to work with you again. And that was my experience. And I literally know in the beginning, I said yes to everything. I was like, oh, you need somebody to roll cable? I'm rolling cable. You need somebody to do this. And then over time, the things I volunteered for got bigger and bigger. And then it became, oh, Jenni has a good eye for what a good project is. Because I can really hone in on ideas. Like I know a good idea when I hear it. And if I like that idea, I immediately am like, I like your idea. How can I be a part of it? And
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So if you're not good at networking, or I don't know, you don't network, like, is there a sustainable way to really be a successful producer, or is networking part of the gig?
Networking is part of the gig. And again, I say that reluctantly because, again, it's a skill. It's a skill. And if I can do it, you can do it. Because I would so much rather be at home and go on a job board and just submit applications. But people need to get to know my face and what I look like. It's funny because producers are behind the scenes, but you'd be surprised how much you want people to be able to recognize you and go, oh, you're Jenni Powell, or at least know your name. So when you're at like an event and you're wearing a name tag, they're like, "Oh, Jenni Powell, you did Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and you did this and this and this," and I can go, "Yep, that's me. What do you have?"
Hey.
Yeah.
What are you
are
good
you
at?
working on? Let's talk about it.
I want to go back to something we were talking about 5-10 minutes ago about the career path. So you have a degree in psychology, went that route. I'm assuming you were doing acting gigs as well as that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, just an assumption I'm making. You mentioned you were involved with the drama department at down in San Diego. How did you make that transition from, like, I've got to admit, let me try to rephrase this.
Sure.
You moved to LA.
Yes.
I've got to believe you have a more challenging road to get into places because you're fighting with people who went through acting school and like the traditional path, right?
Yeah. Yes.
How did you get into it and be successful at it? Like, was it extra challenging? Like, how do you make those inroads if someone's listening to this and going, you know what? I was a teacher, got my education degree, and I kind of want to do this now. Like, what are they up against?
So I did two major things when I moved to LA. I did not make the move before I knew people in LA already. And I had a really good friend who I've known for my whole life, who I trust, who I could stay with. And she was dating a guy who was going to film school. And he was willing to bring me on sets. And I went, "Great. Get me on sets," because I knew I needed to be on sets. Also, there's something you can do in LA called extra work, which is, all the people who are in the background, the people that make the scene. Those are cast people, and there are several places you can sign up to be an extra. And you basically, it might be updated now, it's been a while, but we used to have to call in on a phone line, listen to what was available and go, "Oh, that's me," and then call another number and hope you get through. And then they go like, they have a little picture of you and they're like, "Yep, you got the right look." Boom. It was not about acting, really. It's like, we need bodies on a set. However, it got you on to sets. And I learned very quickly that for all the people who were just there kind of sitting in a chair, just waiting to be called, there were a few people who, without being pushy about it, could make themselves stand out because they're like helpful and they're engaging. And they were never going to let me do a major job, but you could be pleasant and like maybe get to a position where the ADs started to recognize you, and you could get higher bookings because they want people that are reliable. You're going to see this common theme in my story is I made myself valuable to them, and I had a specific look that they were looking for. I had red hair then, and they were looking for, I was 25, but I looked younger. I looked like I was 18. And so they could book me on what's called 18 to look younger. So I played high school students a lot. I was 25. I was well out of high school. So, and I just kind of learned that system and started to be recognized that I was somebody who was reliable and would show up, and ADs started to talk to me more and be like, "Well, you want to do something more than extra work?" And I was like, "Yes, actually I do." And I could pick their brains. So, like I said, I spent time getting a film school education in a way that was unique because I didn't have the ability to, but I knew people who were in film school. I attached myself to them, and I did extra work, which pays minimum wage, by the way. But again, I mentioned I had a savings account when I came, so I kind of lived off that. And there were tricks and tools of ways you could get more money on a set. Like if you bring your car, they give you an extra $20. If there's water in the scene and you get wet, they give you a pay bump. and you just learn to like accept, like, great, you want me to jump in a pool? I'll jump in a pool. There would be bumps for like, are you willing to make out with this person? I'm like, yeah, why not? If you're gonna pay me an extra $30, why not? And yeah, and that's kind of how I got a reputation of being somebody who was reliable. So oftentimes they started calling me.
So reliable, resourcefulness sounds like a couple essential traits or skills you need. Now, if you go to film school,
Mhm.
is the path much easier? Like, do you have built-in networking already existing because of that with professors and things like that?
Hopefully, if you're doing your job as a film school student and working hard and making connections, not only making networking with your professors, but also the people you were in film school with at the time. I always tell my producing students, I was like, don't only work with the producing students. Go to the filmmaking department, ask them if they need a producer. Start building a network amongst your peers, because when you get out of here, those are the first people you're going to support, like support one another. I talk a lot about collaboration. I never would have made it if I didn't have that friend willing to let me stay with her, if her boyfriend hadn't been willing to take me on sets, if I hadn't, I got to the point where I had a group of people that we were all reliable extras. And so when we would call in, one person would get on the phone and we'd be like, hey, Jenni's here too. Can you book her? And we'd pass the phone around and all get each other work that way. And it was fun because then you had friends with you. I know people talk a lot about nepotism and like, oh, it's so not fair that it's just like who you know, but there's logic to it. If you really think it through, there's logic to it. And yes, we're talking about projects that could be millions of dollars. And if they're going to trust you with that, of course you want to work with people that you can trust and are reliable and not take a chance on somebody completely new to you. So
it makes tons of sense. Makes tons of sense. I want to ask you about, I don't know anything about this, so you could shut me down real quick if it's not the case. What it is this like being a producer, is it a male dominated ecosystem still? Has it never been a male dominated ecosystem? I'm assuming at some point it probably was, but
yeah.
Is there any sort of challenge being a woman going into the field versus a male going into the field?
It's really interesting. I thought differently about this when I was younger. And I think it's not ego so much as I was really naive and I was like, I'm not going to have a problem. Like, I was aware it was a male dominated field, but I didn't care because I was willing to do 10 times the work to just, whether I was a man or a woman. But I do know now, over my years of experience. One sec.
Sure.
I was in situations where it was male dominated, and I do know that my position as a woman was a little harder because of just simply that. I was really lucky. Again, I think it is because I came to LA a little bit older. I know 25 is still, I had a lot of learning to do, but I did have a good head on my shoulders for staying clear of, like, if it didn't feel good in my gut, like if I was working for someone who was putting me in a position where I felt unsafe, I felt empowered to walk away from it. I think that's partially because of my upbringing. My parents always taught me that it doesn't, I had a stay-at-home dad and a mom that worked. So for me, it's sometimes hard. I get this question a lot, and I think it's very important. I think that women do need to think about it when they come into this space. I think I'm really lucky because of the fact that I was empowered to walk away from anything that made me uncomfortable. But obviously we can see in the news and from what's going on that there have been men that have used their power to dominate in a way that shouldn't be happening. I think it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about teaching and now working with students who are coming up through the industry, because they are the ones that can change that power dynamic. And I think it's very important for us as educators in the film school space to start breaking that down and saying it should not matter whether you're a man or a woman, or whether the color of your skin, but right now we have to admit that it's there so we can dismantle it. I think, like I said, I was really naive in the beginning and I said, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to ignore it. Ignoring it is not going to solve it. We have to take it apart.
Do you see progression being made there? I know obviously the news stories from over the last 6-ish years
Sure.
have done some of that, but do you find it starting to balance off a little bit more and people being more aware of other people they are around, or is it still early stages, uphill battle?
I think we were making very good progress, and then this long string of why am I blanking on the word? Strikes. The string of strikes that has happened. I think there's a little bit of a falling back right now out of fear, because there's not a lot of work right now. And so it's kind of created this power vacuum where people are just like, oh my God, I got to hold on to any power that I have, because there's not a lot of jobs right now. We're not in an upswing of like, there's so many opportunities, so there's room for everybody, and let's like make those spaces. I know right now, and I'm hoping that, it'll be improved if somebody's listening to this in the future. Maybe that's not where we're at now. I really hope so. But there's a lot of fear right now with students of not knowing what's out there for them when they get out. And we can't reassure them at the moment. Again, I hope that changes really soon. I think it was a merge. I think it was both the pandemic happening, and that shut down a lot of things. And then now coming out of it, people being very eager to make change, but it's a scary time to do that when there's not a lot of work. So the bounce back hasn't happened yet. I can only hope that because of the conversations that were happening before that occurred, that when the bounce back happens, we're not starting from scratch. We're not starting from zero. That's my hope.
If advice to women going into the field, wanting to be a producer, you mentioned you had a good head on your shoulders, but you had that gut feel that you listened to. Hey, I don't like the situation I'm being in, and you had the confidence to walk away from that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that the biggest piece of advice you would give to women entering the field, or is it something else you would just give in general?
I would say what has improved is that there are a lot of more women in the space. So I say this both to women wanting to come into the space and women already working in the space. Women should mentor women. I was very lucky. Most of my producing mentors were women. Again, looking back on it, again, I think it was my gut instinct that I felt more comfortable being mentored by other women. And so that I just did that more. But I felt that really empowered me because I was working with women that were doing what I hoped to do. So that's what I would suggest. And yes, definitely, we really need to, and this isn't just women, this is anybody. If you're ever in a situation, and I talk to my students about this all the time, if it doesn't feel right, be empowered to walk away. Nothing in this industry is worth putting yourself through emotional trauma or getting into dangerous situations. We've had too many stories of people on set getting into accidents, and pretty much 90% of them can be traced back to somebody who didn't feel empowered to speak up.
That's great advice. So Jenni, if you look at the work you do as a producer, all the different things that you're in charge of, what do you like most about it?
Woof. It's so hard because there's just so many little bits of it that I love so much, which is why I do it. Probably the best part of it is the camaraderie, is the time. It's just like working together. It's almost like summer camp. Like you're just very close with this group of people for a very specific amount of time. And just the like late nights working, and you've called like second meal, and we're all eating pizza and laughing because we're just kind of going a little loopy. Just all the amazing friendships that you make. There's kind of not a bond like going through a really intense project together and knowing that you will get through it on the other side, and when it's done you have something you can point to, and you can say, I was a part of that, and hopefully what you've created inspires people or entertains them. Like, not every piece has to be like, very deep, but that you contributed to something for the enjoyment of others.
Excellent. And then the flip side of that question, what do you like least about it?
Can we please get to a point where we're not having to work 12, 14-hour days? Come on, guys. We can do this. We can do better planning. People just don't work as well when they're exhausted. So let's work this out.
So I knew asking you this, because you said first in, last out. Right? I knew the answer was going to be the hours. So at least I had some intuition going there. Couple questions here, if I can, Jenni. Essential, we talked a lot about skills you should have: networking, perseverance, resourcefulness, things like that. But if looking at someone who's younger, like, what would you say the essential skills for someone? It's got to be organization. Is it like, what are the common traits of successful producers?
I think the biggest one is you can't be afraid to speak up, because you are the leader. You are the producer is the one who's making sure everyone is working safely, is working comfortably, or as comfortable as you can get it, considering sometimes these are very intense projects you're working on. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is having a voice. And second is organization, because that's huge. The organization and the flexibility. Again, be as organized as possible, but also understand that things will go wrong. I can't stress this enough. Things will go wrong. They will. Not they might. They will. And you just have to be willing to roll with the punches, because they will come.
Very good. How about some misconceptions about the role?
You're going to be rich beyond your wildest dreams. Producing is a high risk, high reward job. If you're doing it, most producers, for every huge one you think of that is, and by the way, here's an exercise. Name your favorite directors. You can probably rattle off a bunch of them. Name your favorite producer. Little harder, right? So there's a bit of humbleness that you have to take with that. That the producer, even though they are the top, they are not the face. And you just have to, like I said, most times when I am networking, people aren't finding me because of my face. I see them look at my name tag and then they go, "Oh, now I know who you are." Because again, I'm not a front-facing person. Although if you watch web series, I appear in a lot of them because, again, low budget. And when they needed some body on set, they're like, "You're going to play this part."
So, well, you're my favorite producer now, Jenni. I can
Oh,
answer this question. Next time someone asks me this question, I can answer it.
my job is
Beautiful.
done.
There you go. Call it a day. All right, let's speak just very quickly to people specifically in high school now that want to go into it. And maybe they want to know they want to be a producer. Maybe they don't know they want to be a producer, but it's something in the film industry or the entertainment industry, I should say.
Mhm.
Like, what advice would you tell them? Just get involved in drama? Like, what things could they do now to improve their chances of finding success later?
While they're still in high school?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Oh,
Have
well,
fun.
yeah.
Have fun with it. Yeah. I mean, I am so grateful to my parents for encouraging me to do arts, to do like they were like, "Hey, play an instrument." And if you don't happen to have parents who do that for you, don't be afraid to speak up and say, "Hey, mom, dad," or whatever your family situation is. I want to try this. I want to try that. That's what high school should be about. Obviously, get good grades because it helps. But that is the time where you should be kind of experimenting and see what you want to do. And even when you get to the point where you want to move into, if film is something that interests you and you want to look at programs that are film schools, try to look for programs that have multiple disciplines. Because even if you start in one, we get this experience quite a bit at NIFA, where during their undergraduate, if they're a BFA, they kind of try out one department and then they go, you know what? I've now figured out that I want to kind of I want to be a director versus a producer. That is the time to kind of try those things out and make those changes. And then you could always go on to a bigger specialization after your undergraduate, like our master's programs we have here. We have lots of students who go through the BFA and then they go, you know what? I got some great foundational knowledge. Now I want to kind of specialize in screenwriting or cinematography. Those are the spaces for you to do that.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. So, Jenni, there's no way I could ask you everything I need to know on this. This is not my wheelhouse. What is important, if anything, what is important for the audience to know that I neglected to ask you?
Anyone can do this. It seems like a big, when you say that word producer, especially when there might be, you don't know a lot about it. You've only seen it as a title on a screen. It's a wonderful job. You're always on your toes. You're always, again, you finish a project and they're like, what's next? Let's do the next one. I know I said things like you make your own hours. You're your own boss. Some of those things might sound scary to you, but some people find them exhilarating. And that's why if throughout this, if you've listened all the way through, thank you. But if the things I were saying,
a long one.
Yeah, if there's things that I were saying got you excited, then jump in.
Excellent. Last one for you, Jenni.
You
have to choose a different career that you'd be happy with.
That I'd be happy with.
Yeah, and what do you think you'd choose? And I'm tempted to pull psychology off here, but I don't know.
I can answer this question.
All right, let's go.
I would be a game designer.
What type of game? Like board games, puzzles?
Tabletop role-playing games. 110%. Okay. I would be fully happy if I were doing that.
Is that a hobby of yours? To play?
I have been DMing Dungeons and Dragons since I was 11 years old. This is kind of cheating because I'm actually developing a role-playing game right now. So it's my
not cheating.
It's my first go around at it. I'm loving it. And so I can confidently say if this were what I do, not just on the side, but like all the time, I would be blissfully happy.
Awesome. And you've thrown it out there, so now you're committed to it. You have to follow through.
You gotta get out there. What did I say? Just do it. Get yourself out there.
That's right. Well, that's awesome. Well, any idea when that's coming out or still TBD?
We're in playtesting right now, and we're on
Okay.
version 3 of the rule book. So we are at the point where we're actively pitching it to distributors. So
Heck yeah.
hit us up.
That's awesome. Well, be sure to update us. Let us know. We'll link it out there as well. We'll
Will
update the
do.
website on it. So, well, Jenni, thank you for your time today. It's a pleasure having you. Thanks for sharing the information here. We talked about networking. Someone wants to reach out, ask you a question about careers, find out more about you, anything like that. What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
So if you just Google my name, Jenni Powell, it's JenniPowell. That's the one trick. You can find my website, which is jennipowell.com. You can find me on social media. It's just my name. This is a branding thing. Like, start grabbing your name for things if you can, because you want people to be able to find you. So I'm pretty easy to find online.
Excellent. Jenni Powell, everyone, award-winning producer, chair of producing at New York Film Academy. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to like, rate, review, share the podcast. To explore other careers or to share your career with us, please visit our website to find out more. And until next time, be kind to one another. Go Bills.